Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tezvav Amud Beis, starting with Tezvav Amud Aleph at the very bottom of the new Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses what can you make a lechi with? With what types of things can you then make the lechi? Says the Mishnah, Bekol oisin lechayayin. You can make everything with whatever type of substance you want to make the lechi. Whether it's with ofar or whether it's clay, you can even make a lechi with a living animal. Rabbi Meir says you cannot, since you cannot make a mechitza with ruach chaim, so too you cannot make a lechi with ruach chaim. Now the Mishnah goes on to say, once we're talking about making a lechi with an animal, so too then we want to talk about other halachos with a living animal. So the Mishnah goes on to say, umetame mishum goylel. And if you use an animal to cover up a kever, a goylel, which has the same category as the mace, just like the mace is not only metame when a person comes in physical contact with the mace, but it's also going to metame as an oil. So if a person is above the goylel, even when it's removed, or it's in the same oil as the goylel, is going to be tamei, the same type of tumas hameis. Rabbi Meir metaher, whereas Rabbi Meir says again, since a ruach chaim cannot be a mechitza, an animal cannot be serving as a mechitza when it's alive, so too then it cannot be a covering for a kever, which also is a form of a mechitza. We're on top of Tes Vav Amud Beis. The Mishnah continues about living animals that you can do certain things with. V'koisvin alov gitei noshim. According to the Tanna Kama, you can write a get on an animal. For example, writing a get on the horn of an animal. Now, a caveat when it comes to the halachos of gitin, it must be that the thing that you're writing the get on is already detached. For example, something that's going to be attached to the ground and you go ahead and write a get on that, some sort of plant or whatever, that obviously will not be valid. It has to be detached. Similarly over here, it's required that it be detached, so that if you're going to write a get on the horn of an animal, when you give the get, it must be that you're giving the entire animal as a matana when you give the get as well. Rabbi Yossi Hagalili Poisel, Rabbi Yossi Hagalili says it's invalid to write a get on a living animal. The Gemara will explain his reason. Says the Gemara, Tanya Rabbi Meir Omer. The Gemara brings a brayso that teaches that Rabbi Meir taught the following: Kol davar sheyesh bo ruach chayim ein oisin oisoi. Every living animal cannot be used for the following things: Loi doifin lesukkah, not as a wall for the sukkah. V'loi lechi lemavui, you cannot put it at the end of your mavui, the entrance of a mavui, to metaltel in the mavui. Loi pasin li beirois, you can't use them as pasin for the beirois. If you have a be'er that the chachamim were mekil for the ole regalim, to draw water from a be'er, which is a reshus hayachid, into the reshus harabim, they permitted you to take an reish-shaped pasin, boards of an amma by an amma on all corners, and according to Rabbi Meir, to also take a pas in the middle of every direction, and then be able to draw water, even though they're not regular mechitzos, a special kula. You cannot use living animals for those pasin. He goes on to say, you cannot use a living animal to be a covering for a kever. Mishum Rabbi Yossi Hagalili Amru, in the name of Rabbi Yossi Hagalili, they said the following: Af ein koisin alav gitei nashim. You can also not write a get on an animal that's alive. My time of Rabbi Yossi Hagalili. The Gemara now wants to understand what is his reasoning. Gemara now brings up brayso, the Tanya Sefer. Now the pasuk states in regards to get, V'kosav la sefer krisus, v'nasan biyada. And he, the husband, writes a book of separation, a sefer krisus, referring to the get, and he gives it to her in her hand. So the brayso now states the word sefer. Sefer implies that it's a klaf. Ainly ella sefer. I only know that you can write on a klaf on a sefer. Minayin lerabbis kol davar. Where do I know you can include everything else to write on? Talmud loymar v'kosav lo mikol mokom. That's why it states in the pasuk, and he will write to her, referring to on anything. Imkain, if it's on anything, matamul loymar sefer. Why does it say a sefer? Loymar lecha, to teach you certain limitations. Ma sefer davar she'ein bo ruach chayim ve'eino oicha. Just as a sefer is not a living animal, it's also not a food item. Af kol davar she'ein bo ruach chayim ve'eino oicha. So too, anytime you write a get, it cannot be on something that is a living animal or a food item. V'rabbanon miksiv b'sefer. The Rabbanan asked, does it say v'nasan la krisus b'sefer? Does it say b'sefer, referring to a book, to a klaf? Sefer ksiv. It says sefer. L'sfirus dvorim ba'alma, just expressing the desire to divorce the woman. Who also does it come? V'rabbanan hai v'kos of law my darshi big. The Gemara asks, what is then v'kos of law explained according to the Rabbanan? After all, they say v'kos of law is coming to teach us mikol makom. You can write on anything. Hahumi boile biksiva mizgareshes ve'ena mizgareshes bekesef. They learn v'kos of law is coming to tell you that you can only divorce a woman with a written document, with a get, but not divorce her with money. Why would I think a man can divorce his wife with money? Says the Gemara, Salka daitachamina, I might think to say, just like there's a comparison of Yitzia going out, referring to Gerushin, to Havaya, referring to Kiddushin marriage. Ma Havaya bekesef, af Yitzia bekesef. Just like when it comes to Kiddushin, it can be performed with kesef, so too I might think that the Gerushin can also then be performed with kesef. Kamash malan v'kosala teaches me davka ayidei a shtar. Rabbi Yossi Aglili hai svara minole. Where does he know this svara? That it can only be done with a sefer. That it can only be done with a shtar. Nafkale mi sefer krisus. The pasuk says v'nasan la sefer krisus, because of the sefer krisus. Sefer kursa ve'indavar achar kursa. Only a sefer can make the separation between a man and his wife, and nothing else. And therefore, money is not going to be valid. V'rabbanon hai sefer krisus mi boile dedavar hakares beino leveino. They need these words sefer krisus to make a separation between a man and a woman without a condition when he gives her the get. As follows. L'diktanya, hare zegitech al manashe lo tishti yayin, al manashe lo tilchi lebeis avich. On condition, I'll give you this get on condition you'll be divorced, on condition that you do not drink wine, on condition that you don't go to your father's house. So the Bryce explains, if it's la'olam, if this condition is open-ended, then there's not going to be a severance, a separation that's between him and his wife, and it requires a krisus, and therefore it's invalid. If it's going to be kol shloshim yom for 30 days, then harez a krisus, then it's going to be a condition that's valid. It's going to be a separation, a severance between the man and his wife. Rabbi Yossi Haglili nafkalei mikares krisus. Rabbi Yossi Haglili learns this out, that you cannot make such an open-ended, indefinite condition from the fact that it says krisus in the pasuk and not kares. The fact that it says krisus comes to teach me this din. V'rabbanan kares krisus lo darshu. And the Rabban don't make a drasha from the word krisus. The Gemara now brings the Mishnah that speaks about mechitzos. After speaking about a mechitzas lechi to matir tiltul in a mavui, the Mishnah now talks about the mechitza in general. What are the things that are required to make a valid mechitza? Says the Mishnah, Shaira shechansa bebika. If there's a group of travelers that encamp in an open field is not a reshus harabim. So midiraisa, it's not usher to metaltel there, but it's also not reshus hayochi because it doesn't have partitions, it doesn't have mechitzos. So The Chachamim said it's a din of a karmelis, where midir rabbanan it's prohibited to metaltil daled amos in a karmelis. So those who encamped there right before Shabbos, they wanted to then be able to then metaltil in that open field. So what did they do? They made a vehikifu beklei behema. They encircled it with the vessels of a behema, meaning with the saddle of the animal, with the pillow that one sits on the animal, and other types of kelim. So metaltal and besoicha, the din is that this validates the karmelis to go ahead and metaltal within this. In other words, essentially they made a makeshift reshus hayachid. So even though it doesn't validate tiltul in a reshus harabim, but for a karmelis, it will be a valid type of mechitza, and therefore you can go ahead and make a reshus hayachid in this manner. Even though these clay behema are only temporarily there, they're going to be removed and used afterwards, but nonetheless, now they can be used as a mechitza. Ubilvad, with providing the following conditions. Sheyehei goder gavoya asar tfachim, that the wall is at least 10 tfachim high. That's the minimum height of a valid mechitza. V'lo yuhu pirtzois yeseros ala binyan, that the gaps are not greater than the closed parts of these mechitzos. And kol pirtzoshi ke'eser amos mutaros mimneshi kepesach. If it's going to be a gap of eser amos, then it doesn't invalidate the mechitza because it's considered to be a pesach, an entranceway. However, yeser mikan also, if it's greater than a width of eser amos, then it will invalidate the mechitza. So the mechitza has to have three essential qualities. It has to be 10 tvachim high. It has to be that it's not going to be parvutz meruba ala oime. That means the gaps are not greater than that which is going to be closed. And it also cannot be greater than eser amos wide. Says the Gemara Itmar, parutz ke'oimen. If you have the place that is gapped, the gaps, the open gaps, and they are the same size as the closed, is that going to be valid as a mechitza or not? So, for example, you have, let's say, you have 4 tfachim that is closed. Then you have 4 tfachim that are open. 4 tfachim that are closed and 4 tfachim that are open. Is that going to be valid? Says the Gemara. Make a better example. That's less than 4 tfachim, because 4 tfachim has a chashivus of a wall. But let's say it is 3.5 tfachim. So you have 3.5 tfachim closed and 3.5 tfachim open. Is that going to be valid to make a mechitza if you have 3.5 tfachim closed and then 3.5 tfachim that are open, and then 3.5 tfachim closed and 3.5 tfachim open? Does that make a valid wall? So it's a machlokes. Rav Papa Omar Mutter, Rav Huna Beredi Rav Yoshua Oimer Aser. Rav Papa said it's a valid mechitza, whereas Rav Huna Beredi Rav Yoshua says it's invalid. Rav Papa Omar Mutter, because Hochi Agmarei Rachamon LaMoshe. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu then taught Moshe Rabbeinu. We know that mechitza, as we learn in Daf Dalid, is halach LaMoshe Misinai. So Rav Papa says this is indeed what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had taught Moshe Rabbeinu in regards to mechitza. Lo tifreit ruba. You cannot have a gap that is greater than the closed space. Diuk. If the gap is the same as the closed space, then it's valid. Rav Huna Beredi Rav Yoshua Omar Aser. Rav Huna Beredi Rav Yoshua says that would be Aser. Hachi Agmarei Rachman LaMoshe. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu in regards to mechitzas. Gadar Ruba. Make the fence, the closed part, the majority. Diuk, if it's going to be the same, then it's going to be invalid. Tnan, asked the Gemara from our Mishnah, there's going to be a kasha in Rav Huna Rav Yeshua and a support for Rav Papa. It states, "V'lo yiyu pirtzois yeseros ala binyan." You cannot have gaps that are greater than the closed part. Diuk ha bebin kebinyan mutar. But if it's going to be gaps of the same size as the binyan, as the closed part, then it's going to be valid, just like Rav Papa said. So we then have a support again, a proof for Rav Papa, and a kasha on Rav Huna Beredi Rav Yoshua. Answers the Gemara Lo teima ha kibinyan mutter. Don't say the diuk that if it's kibinyan, if it's the same size of the clothes, it will be mutter. Ela ema im binyan yeser ala pirtza mutter. Say that if it's going to be closed that is greater than the open gap, then it's going to be mutter. Aval kibinyan mai, if it's going to be the same, what would be the din? Osir. Ask the Gemara, Ihochi, if this is how you're going to explain, then listni lo yu pirtzos kibinyan. Let the Mishnah teach something that's more clear and say that you cannot have that which is opened like the same size which is closed. And if that's going to be invalid, then kol shekain, if it's going to be a greater gap than that which is closed, it'll be invalid. So why didn't it teach it that way? Says the Gemara Kasha. Rav Huna bar Yoshua, that would be a kasha in terms of explaining the Mishnah. I'd have to then explain it with difficulty. The Gemara now attempts to bring a raya, a proof, again for Rav Papa. Toshma, from the following Mishnah in Sukkah. Hamekares sukkosoi b'shipudin oi ba'aruchos hamita. If one takes shipudim, or metal spits, or the legs of a bed, both of them are invalid for schach, because they're mekabel tuma, and he puts them across on the top of the sukkah. Im yesh revach beineim kemoisem kshera. If there is a space in between these metal pieces where you're going to put the schach, then it's going to be kosher. So from here it implies that you have the same size gap as you do the closed places. So when it comes to sukkah, and we're saying it's valid, so we're going to transfer that to here as well. If you have the same size space as you do that which is closed, it's going to be a valid mechitza like Rav Papa. The Gemara is doiche this proof. Over here we're dealing with a case in Sukkah where the space in between these metal posts, these metal either legs of the wall or legs of the bed, or these metal spits, we're talking about where there's more of a gap than those pieces that are in between. And enough they can be nichnas, you can place and also take out. So it's a little bit greater. Ask the Gemara, Hare, it says that in the Mishnah, Im yesh revach beineim kemoisem kshero. So the pshutoi of this Mishnah seems to imply it's exactly the same space as the metal pieces that are on either side. So why don't we learn like that? You can go ahead and be mitzamtzim. Ask the Gemara. Why are you learning the Mishnah differently? Answers the Gemara because Omer Rav Ami b'ma'adef. Rav Ami explains because our Tan of our Mishnah did not want to be mitzamtzim, and therefore you want to make it larger, that the space between these two metal pieces is indeed larger for the schach to go on. And therefore we don't have a raya again for Rav Papa. Rava Marava said a different answer. Im hayu noisnin erev noisnoi shasi. If you put the metal pieces across, let's say horizontally across, then you have to put the schach then vertically across. Now the fact that it's vertically across means that it has to overlap above on both sides of the metal, whereby there has to be more space than the metal pieces themselves, or vice versa. Im noisnoi shasi. If you put it vertically, the metal pieces, then noisnoi erev, then you have to put the schach opposite, meaning horizontally. So there has to be more space for the schach to go, so that it overlaps the metal pieces. Either way, we find that the gap is going to be greater than that which is closed. So therefore, again, you have no raya for Rav Papa from this Mishnah.